And a quick apologetic note from good old Murd here. If you're noticing a little bit of auditory choppiness here, if the audio's a little inconsistent, sound tinny at times, choppy at others, that is on my end, and I apologize to all of CGSdom for that. It's a little bit of a learning curve as far as my internet connectivity down here in the edge of the world in Stone Harbor. I'm kind of hopping between my wireless modem and Wi-Fi, and sometimes one works and the other doesn't. Sometimes the other works and the one doesn't. And towards the end of this episode, we kind of got it patched up, and my audio is a little more consistent at that point. But for the first half, you may have some trouble listening to my remarks, and I apologize for any earaches or tinnitus you may suffer as a result. Contact your HMO. Don't tell them I sent you.
All right. This is Comic Geek Speak, episode 1610, Off the Rack Reviews.
You got it on Wednesday, and it was like about it going to the volume up. These guys will talk about it, everything that geeks love. From cake to laser beams, opinions like the seasons, on everything you read. And comics, movies, games, toys, artists, Comic Geek Speak, Comic Geek Speak, Comic Geek Speak. Comic Geek Speak, Comic Geek. Uniting the world's mightiest heroes. This is...
I'm Brian Chrisman.
I'm Adam Murdo.
I'm Chris Eberle.
And I'm Danny O'Brien.
And welcome to the show. After several false starts, here we are.
My fault, everybody. My fault.
No, that's all right. This is going to be our Off the Rack Reviews, where we talk about some recently released comics. This is actually our April edition. The comics to discuss this episode are from DC, Bloodlines #1, from Marvel, Black Panther #1, and I guess this is from IDW, Micronauts #1. And of course, spoilers. We may talk about a few other things. Actually, we're going to have a little bit of Chris's take on DC Rebirth in a second. But first, a word from our sponsor. This episode of Comic Geek Speak is brought to you by Discounts Comic Book Service. Go to dcbservice.com for all your pre-ordering needs. As always, when you pre-order from them, any DC, Marvel, Dark Horse, or Image book, they are right away 40% off cover price. Most of your other publishers are between 20 and 35% off cover price. And they do run many specials this month with additional discounts, like up to 45, 50, 60, even 75% off cover price. They also have sometimes bundles, like they're doing Rebirth bundles right now, where they'll put all the titles in the bundle for one low price. And they also have their promotion, seems to keep going every month. When you pre-order any new DC or Marvel trade or hardcover, they are half off cover price. You can get your books shipped weekly, twice monthly at Bags and Boards. We've been with them for years. They're great people. Check them out with your pre-ordering. DiscountComicBookService.com. All right. Do I throw the cat in the background there, Bird?
No, that's mine.
Oh, that's yours.
Yeah, that's Gordon. He walks around the house meowing really loudly, and it sounds like he's saying hello.
Ah.
Putting out APBs, clearly.
Kind of.
I want to comment on the majestic sense of reassurance I feel seeing Murd safely ensconced in his summer residence with the ever-present schooner picture behind his head. And that, is that a bathroom rack, Murd? What is that?
It is a towel bar, sir.
Towel bar. So we know Murd is in Stone Harbor, and it's just... There's just a continuity to things that you appreciate when you see him. You're just like, there he goes. Oh, he's pivoting the picture. Oh, look at that. Oh, there's that sink with the bucket underneath.
Nobody but us can see this.
Doesn't matter. I just...
Theater of the mind.
That's true.
Life is so tumultuous. Those little moments of continuity they keep you going.
I can't argue with their life is too short.
Well said.
All right. Well, now, Chris, since you didn't get a chance to join us for the DC Rebirth chat, why don't you give us your thoughts on that?
Thank you, my friend. Honored. Well, first and foremost, I really enjoyed this. I felt that with Jeff Johns at the helm, I was pretty assured that I'm at least going to enjoy this as a piece of comic book work. I wasn't sure what to expect when it came to how they were going to address the universe, the state of the DC universe going into this book, and as we went through the story, I listened to your guys' episode, which of course was a delight, and I might have been Murray who mentioned, the absurdly ludicrous party line statement Dan Dio made 5 years ago, there is no back door, which we all laughed at back then, and I'm laughing at it doubly now because that's the kind of corporate party line is just complete nonsense. And I did not catch the Watchmen clues initially. When you read it a second time, I mean, it's obvious.
Oh, sure.
When you look at it a second time. But I just was not expecting that at all, because like Murd said in the recording, I've always seen the Watchmen as like its own world. I've never even considered it mixing with the traditional DC universe. And we'll get more to that in a moment. What I liked about, first of all, the art in this was magnificent, and one of you mentioned how it had a very seamless quality to it, even though it was different artists, which I agree with.
That was Danny, yep.
And just magnificent artwork throughout. And I think the word that most comes to mind when I think of my experience of reading this story, it's emotional.
Oh.
I was, first of all, I was very moved by Wally West's sort of quest as he went through the Speed Force, trying to find an anchor for himself in the time stream, so to speak. Beautifully written by Johns, just his monologue and his struggle as he tries to find that anchor. The scenes with Linda were heartbreaking.
You mean like the Eastines?
Yes, Pansy. Do you want to elaborate on that?
Well, yeah, I'm looking at pages 38 and 39 of the issue, and I was just telling before Murd got back on the line that just about an hour and a half ago I actually bought these pages, the original pages. So
of course you did. Outstanding.
Yes.
Outstanding. The scene where Wally and Barry reunite, and that Barry remembers Wally, I thought was, first of all, the artwork in that. Who was the Pants? Who was the artist for that sequence?
Phil Jimenez.
Okay. I should have known that. I don't have the page numbers here, but when Wally says, when he has that crisis pose that you guys mentioned, and he says, I'm back, and there's tears in his eyes, and then Barry just remembers, he says, I'm so sorry, Wally. And then the next page, of course, God, Pats, how much is this page going to go for with a page they embrace? I can only imagine.
I don't know.
How could I ever forget you? And for me, not only was this deeply satisfying just as a reader, reading a powerfully conceived sequence, just so rich with emotion and feeling. When I read this as a fan, I felt like the DC universe I loved had returned. And for me, this book shouldn't be called Rebirth. I think it should be called Restoration. Because
that's a little longer to fit on the masthead, though.
Yeah. But I mean, and I realize I'm jumping ahead because we're not sure how they're going to take all this, obviously. But the very fact that they're having people remember the old DCU, the fact that they're talking about like we're all younger and we've lost time and all of this, that they reference throughout the story. By the end of this, I felt like I had a reunion with friends who I hadn't seen in a really long time, but the kind of friendships where it doesn't, and I'm sure we've all experienced this, it doesn't matter how long you haven't seen or spoken to the person, when you see them and speak, it's like you just saw them yesterday. And I've made no bones in this program about how disappointed I've been with the New 52 overall, with some notable exceptions. And to me, I think the main problem I had with that relaunch, besides the fact that I just saw it from my perspective as a cynical bean counting move to boost sales and so forth, but that aside, that new universe just wasn't really, to me, wasn't anchored in anything. It just felt like it was sort of free floating, and all the characters, it was the same characters, but they didn't have the same depth and even integrity to them. It was like echoes of what the characters I loved. And even though I read a lot of the titles and gave a lot of them a chance, at least initially, with a couple exceptions like Batman and Aquaman, a few other things, I just couldn't stay with anything because it just felt, for me, a lot of it felt very forced, and it felt, and it's just me speaking as a reader of these titles, and it felt unnecessary. And I'm now speaking as a retailer. what happened when they did that? Well, there was a boost in sales. You saw a lot of people coming into shops. Somebody didn't come in for a while because they wanted to get the number one issues and things like that. And then, what a shock, that petered out. Then it returned to what it always does. When they try these things, it just kind of goes back to the fact that you have just a small number of people reading these books, and you're like, well, okay, was it really worth doing all that in the long run? And I think by them doing this, they kind of answered my question now, haven't they? So I was deeply moved by this book. Now, as far as the Watchmen thing at the end, it actually took my breath away. Mm-hmm. I was like, I totally wasn't expecting that. And I have mixed feelings on it. I want to see what they do with it. I'm still a little leery of bringing the Watchmen, or it seems they're bringing the Watchmen into the DC universe. But I'm certainly willing to give that a try. I thought this book was brilliantly conceived. I mean, the narrative pace, especially when Batman finds the comedian symbol and the panel layout. I mean, talk about a dramatic build-up. This comic, I think, is a master class just in terms of craftsmanship in the way this book was done. And I really salute DC, and especially Jeff Johns, the artist working with him, for what they produced here. And again, I don't want to be presumptuous. I don't know where they're going to go with this, but it just seems like between the Jokers from different realities, and Wally's return, the Wally we know, and they even acknowledge the new Wally and the New 52, and Barry remembering him, and it's just, I'm very excited to see where this is going to go, because I really miss the old DC universe. And I'm not saying they're just going to bring it all back. I don't know, but clearly it's there. Because Wally West is there, and Barry remembers that, and Batman's apparently going to remember it. And so, as in terms of craftsmanship, I think this is a magnificent book. Definitely one of the strongest issues, single issues of the year so far that I've read. And as a fan, as someone who's a sentimental person, this was just thrilling to read, and I felt like I was coming home.
Well said, sir.
Thank you.
All right. Well, now let's get into the actual titles for this episode. Which one should you guys want to choose first?
Let's do the one I think is going to be the shortest, which is Micronauts.
Okay, Micronauts number 1. It's a gem of the month. So it's from IDW, written by Cullen Bunn, art by David Baldeón.
Baldeón, yes.
Baldeón, okay. It says, they came from a dying universe. Acro Year, Space Glider, Biotron, and their allies are back on the run from the evil Baron Karza and blasting through a universe where magic and science vie for control. With resources dwindling, the long-lost time travelers may hold the key to salvation. But will it mean Armageddon for our world? Question mark. Dun, dun, dun. Now, I must say, of course, I've read none of these books, so that's why I'm just being the moderator. So, guys and gal, pick it up.
Pants, thanks for doing that wonderful reading the solicitation there. As we all know, and I've talked about this in the program many times, I'm a big fan of the Micronauts. I didn't really have the toys as a kid, but I loved the comic when I was a kid in the late 70s, early 80s. The Bill Mantlo conceived universe, which was based on the Mego toys, right, Pants? Micronauts is Mego.
You got me there, sir.
I'm pretty sure it was Mego. Someone can correct me on the forums if I'm wrong. So, going into this, I didn't expect the same thing because IDW doesn't have the rights to all the Micronauts from the Marvel series because some of the characters were from the toys. Some were conceived by Mantlo and Michael Golden. So I didn't go in with a prejudice thinking, okay, this is going to be Micronauts, Volume 3 from the Marvel series. It'll be something totally different. I was fine with that. Having said that, you know what? I'm sorry. We should be giving our ratings first. I apologize. This is barely a borrow for me.
Okay.
Mert?
A buy.
Okay. Danielle?
Yeah, I would probably give it a buy borrow.
Okay.
You mean a buy-aro?
Sure. I mean, it's kind of expensive, but I don't know.
That's right.
I liked it.
It was a $4.99 cover price, but I think it got $4.99 cover price.
Yeah.
All right, then I'll get in my cow dropping of a review quickly, so then you guys can give it better praise. Honestly, I was just bored by this book. I felt the dialogue was kind of flat and generic. Love the cover; it has almost a Kirby feel to it. That's fantastic. Mm-hmm. But kind of felt like I was thrown in the middle of a story. They don't really give you any kind of grounding in whatever version of the world these Micronauts are in. And I just felt like this is a story I'd read 100 times before in different iterations, different types of characters. There was just nothing about it that struck me as original or dynamic. And considering how visually compelling some of the Micronaut concepts are, like Baron Karza, for example, which they have a field day here with on a splash page, for example, I barely got through this. And this, again, I did not expect the same kind of Micronauts. That's not my issue with it. It's just that I just thought this was a very flat read that didn't take the advantage of the concepts I think it should have. And again, I just felt like I've read this comic many times before, seen it on many different movies before, and on many different TV shows before. The reason why I'm not pantsing it is because I think visually it was fun, and also I could see giving this to a kid and they might enjoy this. So for that, I would give it some props. But for a reader from my perspective and my age and my taste and so forth, this was pretty dull. So very low bar.
Okay. Well, let me begin my remarks by saying that I have virtually zero prior experience with Micronauts in any form. I have encountered a couple of the Micronauts characters that Marvel actually owns, the ones that you mentioned, Chris, that were created by Mantlo and Golden, Captain Arcturus Ran and Marionette, and of course the ever-present Bug.
Yes.
They've had guest appearances here and there in the Marvel Universe over the years. They call themselves the Microns now, I think. But yeah, from a few cameo appearances of theirs, but that's about it. I've never read any of the original 70s, 80s comics, and until just a couple of years ago, I didn't even realize that the Marvel Micronauts series of those decades was based on a toy line. So I not only had I never played with any of the toys as a kid, I didn't even know they existed. So you can say safely that my response to IDW's Micronauts #1 is completely untinged by nostalgia, for better or worse. And I thought it was actually kind of fun, honestly. It's certainly true that some of the character types and the plot structure are things that we have seen before, as Chris pointed out, but I thought it was dressed up creatively enough that I really didn't notice or mind. Yeah, the pacing is quite good. It's just your fast-paced, slam-bang action-adventure in outer space. The artwork, as Chris said, is really quite pretty. Well, the first half of it, anyway. David Baldeón actually only did the artwork for the first half of the issue, and then the person who will be the regular artist for the series going forward, Max Dunbar, did the finished art over Baldeón's breakdowns for the second half. And I did notice, and it's not quite as pretty for the second half of the issue, which is a little bit of a shame. But yeah, on the whole, the visual effect is great. I totally agree with Chris. The cover by J.H. Williams is actually it's very Kirby-esque, as are the sort of the trippy, I don't know if I'd call it flexographic or just overlaid visuals representing the entropy cloud here, which are very reminiscent, and I think perhaps intentionally, of the kind of things that Kirby used to do for some of his cosmic Marvel stories in the mid-'60s, for the Fantastic Four, Thor, and so forth. So yeah, the entropy cloud is very reminiscent of that. Plus, there's the fact that it's this big white object that is systematically destroying worlds throughout the universe, which makes it kind of a crisis-related phenomenon, and so, of course, I pricked up my ears at that. So that's going on in the background. There's this tantalizing war mentioned between, the solicitation Pants Red mentioned the forces of magic and science were in conflict. That may have been edited down to a war between the Ministry of Science, which in the universe is dedicated to expanding and protecting the frontiers of knowledge, versus the Ministry of Defense, which are a bunch of warmongers who engage in conflict for unstated motives, be it ideology or ambition or greed or just plain stubbornness. The important thing to note is that the forces of the Ministry of Defense are led by Baron Karza, and even I know that he was the head of the old Micronauts series, and he's showing up here again, and he's looking very formidable, and there's even a little bit of cool tension between him and his nagging wife, the Baroness Shazraila. So seeing those two characters go at it in future issues should continue to be fun. And then there's the main characters, the ragtag crew of the spaceship Heliopolis, led by the outer space Egyptian Oziron Kyle. That's his name. He's basically Han Solo if he were from outer space Egypt, and if he had a slightly stronger moral code. He's got whole fake pharaoh beard going on. He's kind of been informed by the same Egyptians were from outer space, Chariot of the Gods phenomenon of the late 70s that also informed the original volume of Battlestar Galactica, which is a good thing as far as I'm concerned. And he's got his crew of toyetic cronies. There's an Acro Year on hand. He's looking really cool. There's what is his name? Microtron? What is that? The little guy's name, the guy who...
Microtron.
Microtron, yes. He's like the droid pilot of the starship. So, yeah, that's it. I enjoy the action. Chris is right in that this is not terribly complicated. It's not a deep read. It's not a mind-expanding read by any stretch of the imagination, but it is light, frothy, fun, and I actually quite enjoyed it. And I can see myself continuing to read and fully get something out of this in a color. We were told in a little editorial essay at the back of the book that he's a longtime fan of Micronauts, playing them as a kid, and he was practically begging, so he's putting a lot of himself into it. And so I'm enjoying it. As Chris hinted, it's also all ages appropriate, so whether you're a first-generation fan of have kids at home who you think might enjoy a little age-appropriate outer space action adventure, I'd say you could do worse than pick up a copy of Micronauts #1. So I'm go ahead and give it a buy.
All right, Danny, you're up.
Okay. Well,
you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now. I have pretty much the same thoughts that Murd did. I have never read the Micronauts. I didn't know toys existed. I guess because we're around the same age. Like, it just was not a thing. So I came in not knowing anything. And I really found the first issue to be enjoyable fun. I thought it was a great way to start a first issue. I thought the dialogue was fresh. It was they were fun with the bantering. The art is so lively and fun. The coloring is great. You're kind of dropped into the middle of it, but I feel like the way it was done, you could catch on to what was going on. I thought it was a really good first issue, and I would probably pick up the trade of it. And I do think it would be great for kids. I think this would be a great book to give kids.
I agree with that.
But not knowing anything about Micronauts, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a good time.
And to piggyback on what Danielle said, my borrow is heavily rooted in the fact that I do think this is something I would have a kid read, a younger kid, in terms of comics. It just, maybe I'm becoming an old fart. It didn't do much for me at all, besides the visual elements of it. So, but definitely great for kids.
Yeah, it was good popcorn fun. I wasn't expecting anything. I was expecting to hate it. So I was pleasantly surprised that I actually enjoyed it.
My dear, we're pleased that you enjoyed one of our selections.
I know. It's amazing.
Okay, let's move on. What should we do next?
Why don't we do Bloodlines?
Yeah.
Okay. Bloodlines. This is Bloodlines #1 from DC Comics, written by J.T. Kroll, art and cover by V. Ken Marion. All right. When a meteor crashes to Earth, bringing with it an unspeakable alien presence that terrorizes a nearby small town, the lucky ones die first. As for the rest, they find themselves locked in a hellish struggle for control of their bodies and their minds. This isn't just an invasion, it's an infestation. What would you do if the greatest threat to humanity was hidden away inside you? Award-winning writer J.T. Kroll and superstar in the making V. Ken Marion bring you their dark and horrifying science fiction epic about tortured souls who are cursed to a fate worse than death, much worse.
I'm going to pants it.
I give it a borrow.
I also give it a borrow.
All right, Murd, this is your selection. Why don't you go first and tell us, because this is a book, a concept you loved in the 90s, correct?
Well, love might be a little too strong a word for my feelings about the original Bloodlines story, but there is a certain amount of 90s nostalgia at work in my feelings for it. And I'm glad that DC decided to revisit that idea in some capacity here, and even gladder that the artwork is being provided by an old friend of ours. The creative team here, you mentioned, Pants, J.T. Kroll is the writer, and V. Ken Marion, a talented young man, is doing the pencils. Sean Parsons is inking, and Drew Dalhouse is doing the coloring. So, this is a 6-issue miniseries. And it's a very different take on the Bloodlines concept. Not at all the same thing it was back in 1993. That, if you'll remember, was a big, 20-plus part summer annuals crossover that DC did across all the annuals in the line. And each, the conceit was that it was a bunch of alien beings, heavily armored, part dinosaur, part H.R. Giger movie alien is what they looked like. And they preyed on human spinal fluid, and they killed hundreds of people, but a very small percentage of those people had a latent metagene that was actually triggered by the aliens feeding on them. And so that's how we ended up with this Bloodline story and a whole bunch of new, mostly disposable DC characters. And so they've kind of whittled those 20-plus New Blood, as they were called at the time, New Blood characters down to the gems, and they're using them in the New 52 continuity as, for this Bloodlines miniseries. You can see on the front cover, very prominently displayed, Eddie Walker, alias Loose Cannon, who is the main character in the first issue of the miniseries, and with him are, I guess that's supposed to be Razor Sharp off to the left, Sparks is flying in the air, two others that I haven't been able to identify. And they've completely reconceptualized the alien parasites in that instead of being big, hulking, sentient things that actually had names and personalities and could speak, the alien parasites appear to be just that, tiny little, kind of like spiked balls with bladed tail, like the biggest, meanest sperm you've ever seen, basically. And and they come out of a meteor from outer space, and that's the major similarity between this Bloodlines and the original. Is that I guess to use a cinematic analogy, I guess if the original Bloodlines were like a sci-fi horror action blockbuster movie, Bloodlines, the New 52 miniseries, has been scaled down to more like a low-budget teen horror flick. All of the characters, the phenomenon of the parasites appears to be concentrated to one small town, Pine Ridge, somewhere in the western United States, and most of the people who are infected by the parasites and gain superpowers from them appear to be members of this little community. Many of them appear to know each other. The main character is the aforementioned Eddie Walker, who in the original Bloodlines was a disabled cop who gained superpowers and became like a second-rate blue-skinned Hulk, in effect, called Loose Cannon. Here, Eddie Walker is a teenager who has also lost the use of his legs in some kind of accident, and he's our main character, our POV character for most of the issue, as he just kind of hobbles through his life a little bit on the depressed side, gets by with a little help from his friend Graham and his supportive mother. We're also briefly introduced to a bunch of other characters, a girl named Dana, who is blogging her senior year at Pine Ridge High, a lecherous gas station mini-mart attendant, a young lady who works as a mechanic at a body shop, and a boy named Albert, who is the smartest kid in his class at Pine Ridge High. And by the second half of the issue, we've got several of the important players at a party spot, Sullivan Field it's called, which, as a resident of a rural area, I can... The idea of high school kids just going to an open field someplace to party for want of any other recreational options, that part rang true with me. And then a deer, who is mutated apparently by these outer space parasites, attacks just as some of the hormonal teenagers present begin to get active with one another. That's quite the horror movie cliche there. And at that point, Eddie... the differently abled Eddie discovers that he has a power that he didn't know he had, that we, the readers, didn't see him gain, and he becomes this giant, blue-skinned, loose-cannon Hulk creature a little too late to save his friend, and that's about all the issue covers. So, in terms of plot, it's a little bit shallow so far, but in fairness, this is just the first issue of 6, and as I said, the plot structure seems comparable to that of a horror flick, meaning that we're just getting the first few pages of the script, in essence, in this first issue. So I think the pacing is a little bit unfortunate. It may prevent some people from being sucked in by this first issue, as I predict is probably what happened with a couple of us in this review session, actually. The characters, we don't get very much of them. Just maybe a page or two of most of them. Eddie more than most. And so by the end of this issue, I do find myself kind of caring about Eddie and his friend Graham as a result. The dialogue, I've read better teen dialogue, but having read stories by Bob Haney and Tom DeFalco, I've certainly read worse as well. So the voices are believable enough to be entertaining, and like I said, the idea of these kids hanging out in this open field for want of anything better to do, it kind of rings true to things that some of my high school classmates used to do themselves. So there is some high school naturalism to enjoy here. The artwork, certainly I cannot fault one bit. As I said, Ken is a talented guy. He's been getting work from Aspen Comics for a while. He's an artist of the Michael Turner School, and his visuals with Sean Parsons inks are looking very slick indeed. They're worthy of early to mid-'90s image, I'd say. So better artwork by far than what graced over half of the annuals that made up the original Bloodlines crossover. So it looks more like the kind of 90s artwork that people were deserting Marvel and DC for back in the early 90s. So it's a 90s throwbacksmanship. It's kind of a conscious part of the intent of this, I would have to think. There's certainly it's a heavily 90s referential project that's going on here, even though it's set in the present day. The presence of the smartphones that the teenagers are using are enough proof of that. So far, I'm definitely going to keep reading it. I'm on board for the whole 6 issues. It's not the strongest first issue because, as I said, the pacing's a little unfortunate. We don't get enough of a glimpse of the characters. Only one of them gains superpowers. It really just kind of comes off as the first couple of scenes of a lame teenage splatterfest drive-in movie at this point, or maybe like a series on the CW. But there's every possibility it'll get better. I would like to see more of these characters that I so half remember from the early 90s, many of which disappeared as quickly as they were introduced. I'm hoping that they have a little more luck this time around. But I do remember Loose Cannon. He had a miniseries. I remember Sparks. She was part of Superboy's supporting cast for a time. Razor Sharp had a miniseries of her own. So, yeah, new blood, new life, new decade. It's about time for 90s nostalgia to take off. And so, yeah, it all adds up to a borrow from me.
All right, Danielle, go ahead.
For me, it did nothing. I think pretty much all the thoughts that Chris had about Micronauts just flipped that, and that's my feelings on Bloodlines.
Fair enough.
I found... What's funny is I think I got more out of the issue from Pants's solicit read than from the issue, because I was like, oh, that's what happened in the issue? Because it just didn't seem... It didn't seem that it told that story very well. I thought the dialogue was very stilted. It felt kind of choppy at points because they kept going to the different characters that they were introducing. I think maybe if I read the solicits, maybe this would have made more sense, but going in cold, I think it's kind of hard to follow what's going on. Like, I guess I see the meteorite falling, but that's about it. The art is really good, though. I mean, it's just not something that it's not something I found enjoyable, but I mean, other people, they might really enjoy it if they want to pick it up. It definitely is very 90s. And I think that's kind of where I'm like, yeah, I'm just not... I started reading comics in the 90s, but I'm not really interested in reliving that again.
Did you read any of the New Blood, Bloodlines annuals in the early 90s, Danny?
Oh, I have no... Maybe... Was there, maybe a Batman one or something?
Oh, yeah, there were, 3 or 4 Batman ones.
Yeah, maybe I did. I don't remember, actually. I didn't really read a lot of... I was more Marvel. I rarely read DC.
Oh, yeah, me too, actually.
Yeah, it wasn't until, I think, Nightwing and Birds of Prey is when I... and some, Batman stuff, like the Contagion storyline and the Prodigal Son stuff. I read that stuff, but the only time I ever really read Batman is when Nightwing showed up. If it had Nightwing in it, I was in, but that was about it.
Of course. All right. For me, I'm going to echo a lot of Murd's sentiments. I did not read the Bloodline story, the original incarnation of it in the 90s. I mean, I'd heard of it, but I've never actually read it. So I went into this knowing that it was a throwback in a sense, referring to a 90s story arc, but beyond that, I knew nothing about it. Again, to echo Merd's comments, having grown up watching, 80s teen splatter films, you really get that feeling in this book, especially like Merd when they're in the field, and that bonehead is saying, "Oh, there's nothing in the woods," and then he gets his arm bitten off by the infected deer. And I mean, I was actually laughing because that's so like every Friday the 13th movie you've ever seen, and that was a big part of my growing up in terms of my movie watching. So that was fun, just because you know exactly what's going to happen. So it was just humorous in a sense. I think I met Ken at a show this past summer in Morristown. I think it was the Anime Con that was run. It was a very good show. I think he was there. Very nice guy.
Tall, red hair?
Yeah, I think that was him because he talked about the show, and I think he was promoting Aspen work. Very nice fellow. I'm glad to see he's getting work here, and I do enjoy his art, and Mert, I agree. It definitely has, and I would imagine purposely so, a real 90s feel to that. And I don't mean that here as a negative, because I think it works in the context of the story. Like Danielle said, it's choppy because I imagine they're trying to quickly introduce the various people who are going to be part of the Bloodlines story. We're going to get various powers, I'm assuming. So that does kind of affect the narrative pace of the book in that sense. Because they're just kind of quickly going from, the black girl and then the Asian woman at the gas station, and then the girl who's the mechanic, and then you go back to the main characters. I think what made this a bar for me, besides the fact that I was grooving in a sense, to borrow one of your legendary terms, Merd, on the 90s sentiment. I liked even though it was brief because of the nature of the story, I liked the friendship between Graham and what's the main character's name? Is it Eddie? Eddie?
Right.
Because it's nice to see a relationship where you have two young people where there's that loyalty and the friendship, and Graham is clearly there for his friend who's apparently suffering from some debilitating, maybe it's scoliosis or something like that. So that was what I thought was good writing here, is that they established pretty quickly in a few pages of dialogue that sort of the dynamic of their friendship, and I found it believable, and like their verbal fencing and so forth. So when Graham dies at the end, I actually found that affecting, because I believe that their friendship and their loyalty for each other. Otherwise, not a buy, because this was a kind of story that very predictable in many ways. You've seen this kind of thing before. But again, in no way a pants, because again, the artwork and the general approach artistically I enjoyed, what they're clearly trying to do here with this, and also I just enjoyed the friendship between the two, the main character and his friend who dies by the end of the story, and I just also got a kick out of classic splatter film tropes being played out here in this comic. So it's a solid borrow.
It's always the sexually active ones that die first, aren't they?
So now I'm thinking of Kevin Bacon in the first Friday the 13th.
Oh.
Yeah, I almost forgot he was in the original. He does not meet a good end. So.
All right.
Back to Kevin Bacon.
That's correct. All right, so now are we on to what you've all been waiting for, Black Panther #1 from Marvel?
Hell yeah.
Let me read the solicit. A new era for the Black Panther starts here. Written by MacArthur genius and National Book Award winner Ta-Nehisi Coates, and illustrated by living legend Brian Stelfreeze, A Nation Under Our Feet is a story about dramatic upheaval in Wakanda and the Black Panther's struggle to do right by his people as their ruler. The indomitable will of Wakanda, the famed African nation known for its vast wealth, advanced technology, and warrior traditions, has long been reflected in the will of its monarchs, the Black Panthers. But now the current Black Panther T'Challa finds that will tested by a superhuman terrorist group called the People that has sparked a violent uprising among the citizens of Wakanda. T'Challa knows the country must change to survive. The question is, will the Black Panther survive the change?
Very strong buy.
I would give it a buy.
And above average borrow.
As many listeners know, and certainly all of my comrades here know, I'm a rabid fan of the Black Panther character, his history, the concept, everything. So knowing who was involved in this book, Ta-Nehisi Coates and Brian Stelfreeze, I went into this with pretty high expectations, and they were met. First of all, let's talk about the art. And I'll use a profanity here because sometimes you have to use a profanity. I think it's fucking amazing. I think the art in this book is absolutely breathtaking. My first exposure to Brian Stelfreeze was actually the Daymen comic that he did.
That was your first exposure to him?
Yeah, it was. I have to say it was. Yeah.
Wow. I remember going,
Yeah.
well, I remember, I guess, most from, some of the covers for, like the 90s. I want to say the Batman Chronicles, but some of his covers.
He did a bunch of Batman stuff, didn't he?
Yeah.
And Pants, I mean, I knew his name, but I wasn't really reading Batman that much then. So, I knew who he was, but I hadn't seen a lot of his work, which is to my detriment.
Yeah. And when they say... when they say living legend, they're not kidding. I said, when I see him at Heroes Con, he is swarmed by not just fans, but a lot of the artists come to watch him work.
His bio in the back of the book says, over 50 consecutive covers for Batman Shadow of the Bat.
Shadow of the Bat, that's what it was. Thank you.
Okay, well, I'm going to go into my inventory at the store because we have a ton of those in the 50-cent bins and take a look. The way he... Again, if you're going to render Wakanda, in my book, you have to balance the technological Shangri-La type aspect of that nation, and especially of central Wakanda, the capital, with the fact that it's still very much in the veldt. Like, it's still very much a society that, reveres the natural surrounding in that part of East Africa. And I think he accomplishes that brilliantly here. Just like the iconography, the statues, the buildings, contrasted with the more traditional garb of T'Challa's soldiers and the people and his mother, his stepmother, Ramonda. I just thought this was just so visually breathtaking. What I really loved about this was he takes the original Black Panther costume, essentially, which is not what we know from the Priest run, which is more like a vibranium, almost armored suit, but it's still clearly the Black Panther. Here, it really is a traditional suit, but when the cowl comes away, you see the technology underneath. So he's clearly bringing both concepts together, the original Black Panther costume, which would get torn up all the time, but then he's wedding it to the Priest Texiera costume, which was clearly laced with vibranium, was basically almost indestructible. So, and of course, in a tip to the movie version now, they have that ceremonial necklace around him. I just thought this was a beautiful rendering of the Black Panther visually in this story. Now, in terms of the narrative itself, what I liked about this was, and I'm going to contrast this with what Hudlin did as an example, Coates does something, I think, innovative and new here, in that he takes the fact that the Black Panther is a king in the 21st century, and, the world's, with the exception of some, Persian Gulf nations, has pretty much moved past monarchy in most countries in the world. And he's addressing that fact here, and he's clearly going into a story where T'Challa as a king is going to be challenged. Now, in previous stories, Eric Killmonger did that as an individual, but now it's an actual movement within part of the population, led by members of the Dora Milaje, who are, of course, and that's a magnificent priest concept, who are the female bodyguards, the sort of wives in training of the King of Wakanda and the chieftain of the Panther clan. So I found this story gripping. I don't rank it as high as Priest's first issue of Black Panther. I still think that's a bar that has yet to be reached by any other person who's tackled the character. But I think this gets pretty close, and a lot of it is the art. This Stelfreeze he's a master storyteller visually. His just use of shadow, like in the last page when the Dora Milaje, the two of them are silhouetted by the flames, and one's tending the other. I mean, it's just breathtaking artwork. This is a feast, and they pick it up with Marvel continuity as they've established it in the past few years. Shuri, his sister, is sort of trapped in this limbo death state since fighting Thanos' forces, and T'Challa is clearly in a moment of crisis in terms of the status of his throne and the stability of the country, and so forth. So I'm definitely in going forward. I won't spoil issue 2. I read it. I enjoyed that one as well. And I think this has the possibility to be a really strong contribution to the Black Panther canon.
Well, this is a very technically sound issue. I can hardly disagree with praise given to Brian Stelfreeze for the strength of his design sense and his draftsmanship. He is a very solid artist, certainly, and I too delighted in his combination of the technological and the tribal. It's a recurring motif in everything from architecture to textiles to the tattoos on some of the characters. He manages to incorporate traditional, or at least things that look like traditional African tribal designs with printed circuits, and blends them together seamlessly to physically or visually represent the study and contradiction that Wakanda is. So that's all well done, and I was especially taken by the black and white recap page at the front of the issue and the 2-page credits splash. That gives us some more examples of the incorporation of printed circuits into designs. It's well done. Although I think maybe Stelfreeze shares some credit with Manny Medeiros, who's credited as a designer for the issue. Or maybe that's lettering design. But either way. As to the story itself, this... it seems to me, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Chris, you certainly are much more familiar with Panther lore than I am, that we're being given the Panther put in a situation that we've never quite seen before. Certainly he's been thrust off the throne before of Wakanda several times in the past. But as you said, Chris, since this is the 21st century and populist rule is becoming more the norm all around the world, maybe we've never seen Wakanda turned against their king to this degree. Rather than having the rule stolen from T'Challa, now his power is being destabilized by a groundswell movement. Has this ever happened, Chris, that you know of?
No. I mean, I said the closest you could address would be Eric Killmonger, who led a revolt in the classic Jungle Action series we talked about on the Black Panther Spotlight. But that was basically from his village. So this is a whole other animal, essentially.
Yes. So yes, Wakanda is. It's a place of unrest right now. And the Black Panther himself is not quite the Black Panther himself because, I'm not even sure if we should spoil what happened, the revelation on the last page, but his attention is very much divided by several recent tragic events in his life, one of which he's working feverishly to undo, the result being he doesn't have quite the formidable presence of mind. He's unable to think 3 steps ahead of his opponents, as we've seen him do elsewhere, particularly the Priest run. To which, as Chris points out, Coates did pay sufficient attention. He does reference a number of concepts from earlier takes on the character. We've got the Dora Milaje present, Ramonda is here, the Kimoyo technology. Even on a cursory flip-through, I was able to tell that Mr. Coates did his homework when sitting down to write this.
And, Murd, let me add to that. I concur and wholeheartedly, because when you get to the second issue, you see even more references. So it's clear he's probably read the entire Black Panther canon, and I salute him for that.
Yes, absolutely. While at the same time throwing a couple of new characters and concepts at us. We've got the people, the aforementioned groundswell movement to unseat the king and let the people rule. And, one of their agents, Zenzi, a superpowered emotion manipulator who is actually acting as a kind of populist hate-monger who is... she claims that she's not there to be a fomenter or an agitator, but merely a facilitator. But she's just there to help people see the hatred and disappointment in their own minds as opposed to planting the seeds thereof in them. Call it what you will, she instigates a rebellion amongst some vibranium miners, and the Panther and some of his personal guard are forced to suppress it somewhat violently. Meanwhile, we've got a couple of renegade Dora Milaje running around, and they're wearing some very cool Stelfreeze-designed experimental war suits called Midnight Angels. Heck of it is, those war suits kind of look like a John Romita Jr. design, and I usually kind of hate the things that he designs. Here we are, a J.R. Jr. design that was not designed by him, and Stelfreeze makes me like it. So, he must be a legend. In general, as I said, this is technically proficient. It's a professionally done, well-made comic book. Problem I have with it is, the thing that makes this a borrow for me, while Micronauts was a buy, I just didn't enjoy it particularly. It's a little on the depressing side. There's sort of a grim solemnity about it that, which I'm sure is quite the point of what Coates is doing here. It's not supposed to be a happy story. We're seeing the Panther at a low ebb. We're seeing the Panther coming to grips with all kinds of grief and shame and disgrace. his people losing faith in him for what may be the first time in his tenure as monarch. And so he's taking the character to some new places, and I just personally am not much liking the feelings that this is dredging up in me, seeing the Panther in this position. Also, I would remark that you can sort of tell from his writing style that Ta-Nehisi Coates is a writer who's more familiar with writing novels and essays than he is with comics. Not only is his dialogue a little bit on the prosy side now and again, but just the pacing, the apportionment of the scenes between the nominal star of the book, the title character, and all the other people. The renegade Dora Milaje, Zenzi, and the people. He's trying to give equal time and develop all these different plot lines equally, whereas it's a little more conventional in monomythic superhero comics to give most of the space to the title character and allow him or her to shine. And again, it's the fact that T'Challa is not shining, that is not his usual formidable self, is part of the point of this arc. It's just a point that I'm not particularly enjoying reading. I would very much like to see what Ta-Nehisi Coates has in mind for the Panther when and if he gets past this trough, this bump in the road, and finds his way to a better, more triumphant status quo. But for the time being, this first arc has kind of turned me off a little. So while I acknowledge it was a well-done comic, it wasn't necessarily for me. I think I may check back in with this series again in a future arc. So it's nothing more than a strong borrow for me right now.
All right, number one.
I really quite enjoyed it. I read it when it first came out, whenever that was, a couple months ago, so I don't really remember it very well, but I do remember really enjoying it. I mean, everyone's really pretty much covered it. Art is gorgeous. The coloring, I mean, Laura Martin, amazing. I thought that this being his first comic, Coates' first comic, I thought it was really well done. Like, I thought he did a really good job. I think the thing that I want to touch upon is go Marvel for putting the designer in the credits and giving them the freedom or just actually bringing in a designer to do the title page on the credits. I mean, it's really quite gorgeous. The title page, the first page with the recap, is beautiful. The negative space, the thick darks. I mean, it's really quite gorgeous. And the credits page, I think it's incredibly well done. I might tweak things a little bit. I might be overcritical because I think it's so well done that if you just tweaked it a little bit more, it'd be perfect. But I think it's so bold at times that you lose something, because when everything is bold, it kind of everything ends up fighting with each other, and you have a hard time figuring out where your eyes are supposed to go. But it is really quite beautiful, and I get a very almost Russian deconstructivism feel to it because of the stark lines and the angles and stuff. So it's almost like a propaganda poster in a way. So it's kind of cool that doing that way.
Well put, my dear. Well put.
Yeah. So kudos there. Manny Medeiros, good job, man. You rock it. I just calm down on the font size on the back. That's all. On the letters page, it's a little too bold, a little too big. But other than that, I love the fact that Marvel is actually giving to a designer to, put it all together. Because, I mean, I think a lot of times they'd probably only have a designer doing the production work on these books, and to actually I'm assuming they brought them in to help out, and you can tell that this book is just beautifully constructed between, the artwork and the story and the design. They really put a lot of time and effort, and that was smart because they probably knew this was going to sell a lot because of the writer. He's a very high profile writer.
Yes.
They were going to get a lot of readers on this, and they really put out all the stops. So, good job, Marvel.
One more comment that I want to make, then I have to depart. I'm sorry, I promised my son I'd take him out for ice cream. I referenced this before, and I kind of let it hang. I want to get back to it. I want to contrast this first issue with the first issue of the previous few volumes, which was done by Hudlin, which was after the Priest run. Why I think this is strong, and I mean, I made no bones about how I've really hammered the Hudlin run of Black Panther in previous recordings, and here's another example of why I feel that way. This version, this Coates Stealth Freeze version, not only is it reverential to all the history, both what's still in continuity and what is no longer in continuity, but it's doing something I think innovative, at least so far, and new with it, and compelling and dynamic and exciting. When they relaunched it after Priest, to me, Priest run is still like, if you want to read Black Panther, that's what you should read first and foremost. Besides the Lee Kirby initial appearances, and in the McGregor Jungle Action too, but Priest first and foremost. But when they brought over to Hudlin, he basically just took a lot of other people's concepts. And he really didn't do anything particularly new with them. And that's why I just found that stuff so flat and dull. Although visually some of it was great. But this is something that you've never really seen fully when it comes to the Black Panther and his world, as Murd and I were referring to before. And I agree with Murd. This is dark. I mean, this is T'Challa at clearly a very low ebb in his reign. But I dig stories that deconstruct power dynamics and politics and icons and so forth. So I'm really looking forward to where they go with this in the future. And by the way, one quick artistic point. There's no page numbers. When they show Ramonda condemning one of the Dora Milaje, and then they show the next page like a Wakandan aircraft descending, the art is so breathtaking. I mean, Stealth Freeze really gets Wakanda. I mean, this is masterful, this artwork. I apologize, my friends. I have to depart. I have a day with Mr. Softy or whatever the equivalent is in the area. So, my friends, have a wonderful evening, and we'll all email and talk soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Good night, Chris.
Good night.
All right. Was there anything anybody else has read recently I want to talk about? Because I got something if no one else does.
Nope. I think it's all you.
Oh, yay. Because like I said,
I have something, but you go first.
Oh.
Okay. I said I did not get these books because I was not participating in Off the Racks at the time. But I did just the other day get my copy of Archie number 8. Talk a little bit about Archie in this book in particular. It's still Mark Waid writing it with Veronica Fish on the art. And I just love there's actually a continuity in the Archie comics. There's ongoing stories. I mean, in the past you had a lot of one and done or some smaller arcs, but this has played on everything that's happened before in the book, and I love that. This issue deals with Veronica's father, Mr. Lodge, running for mayor, and what's going on in there, and the background of how it's affecting the relationship between Archie and Veronica. Because Archie and Veronica are a couple in this right now. Betty's on with somebody else, and this has been this way for a couple of issues right now, and they're sticking to it. I still love Jughead, but Mark Waid just threw in a couple of lines in this story that just knocked me out. Jughead's talking to Archie, and he because Archie has his father has got a job with Mr. Lodge, and he's relocating to Singapore because Mr. Lodge is trying to break up Archie and Veronica. And Archie knows that it's all just a ruse. He doesn't really have his father in high regards. And Archie says, but he's so proud of himself, the truth would crush him. And then Jughead, the philosopher, goes, I know, crushing people is the truth's hobby. It's like, come on, that's amazing. And they go for, and there's even another great line here. Betty's talking about, she goes, to Archie, you have to tell your dad what's up, Archie. Things left unsaid will eat you from the inside. It's like, wow, this is an Archie comic, and it's really some profound stuff here. And the visuals are great. I'm just loving the continuity, and I just want to keep seeing every issue what's going to happen next with Betty got to get back with Archie. No, she's with somebody else right now. Veronica and Archie are actually a couple, and I'm digging this book very much. And looking very much forward to the Betty and Veronica book coming out. But Adam Hughes, look for that very much. All right, what do you got, Murd?
Okay, what I got is something that I came across while I was digging through my to-be-read stack to find this month's Off the Recs. I found something else that was released at about the same time. We've kind of nodded toward it a couple of times, but not in any detail. It's a Star Wars comic, and it is the Star Wars C-3PO special, subtitled The Phantom Limb.
Yes, okay, because heard about this. This is where I guess it's explained why he has a red arm, correct?
Exactly, in episode 7.
Okay, can you explain it? Because I'm not going to read the book at all.
Well, I don't want to spoil it.
Okay, well, okay, do your thing then, I'm sorry.
I will do the thing. Well, the creative team is the real, not to bury the lead here, it's written by James Robinson with art by Tony Harris.
Holy crap, really?
Yes, really. It's the original Starman creative team doing a Star Wars comic.
Holy crap, how did I not know that?
I don't know. Shane knew it, I'll tell you that.
Oh, I'm sure he did, yeah.
Yeah, and it's a pretty important story, too, because it does pick up a piece of the movie canonical continuity. It explains that silly red arm. But it does not do so in a silly way at all. It's really a very poignant story. An interesting thing about it is there's virtually no human character. The only human character in the story is there's a little cameo by Poe Dameron at the very end. But for the most part, it's an all-droid cast.
Okay.
It's C-3PO and half a dozen ragtag random droids who happen to be on board a little space cruiser as part of a rescue mission to rescue Admiral Akbar from the clutches of the First Order. They crash on a planet that's full of hostile alien life forms and dangerous environmental conditions, and they have to try to make it to a pickup point where they can rendezvous with Poe Dameron and be rescued. And so it's up to C-3PO and these other droids to help each other through all these horribly dangerous conditions and to try and save their lives. And Tony Harris's artwork, it's heavy on the blacks, but the black ink is a little heavy here and there, but that's his style. And the fact that these are droids and mechanical beings, it makes the heavily geometrical and symmetrical page layouts, panel layouts that he was so fond of doing, make that much more sense. And James Robinson he does interesting things with the fact that these are all non-human characters. They each have their own distinctive personalities and speech patterns. One of them is a construction droid, and all it can do is say its own serial number and the fact that it's a construction droid over and over again in different orders. It's a little like a Pokemon, like that. So it's fun reading the dialogue he comes up with for these inhuman characters, and he has a very definite theme, an emotional message that he's getting across with this story. It doesn't feel in any way gimmicky. The upshot is that C-3PO gets his red arm, but it feels like that is an organic development of the story, as opposed to the story being forcibly reverse-engineered from the fact that C-3PO gets a red arm at the end. It does not feel like it's a contrivance at all. As I said, it's pretty poignant and emotional by the final scene, which is why I don't want to spoil exactly how C-3PO does come by this red arm of his, but it's a theme that it taps into the theme of memory when one is a droid in the Star Wars galaxy, where memories can be wiped at the whim of one's human master at any moment. How much of their memories do these droids get to retain from lifetime to lifetime? Do they actually retain any of the memories that have been wiped? Do they have any hope of reclaiming these parts of their past? And, times past and memory and nostalgia, these were all somewhat major themes of the Starman series, too. So, they managed to produce a Star Wars story that feels a lot like Starman. So, if you're a fan of either of those two franchises, you really should check out this comic. And if you're a fan of both, you have to. So, I'm hoping Shane's got his copy and has read it and loved it by now. So, he can let me know next time we talk. But it would definitely get a buy from me if we were doing rankings.
Oh, excellent. One thing I wanted to bring up, I got a text from Peter after we did our DC Rebirth special last week, a couple days later. He's, of course, a big Teen Titans fan, and he texted me, "Can you believe it took me 30-plus years to read Kid Flash's first appearance?" So he had never read that. And as I got the text, I was looking around my room, and I saw a short box. I could see through the opening where the handle is, and I was pretty sure I saw my copy of Flash number 110, first appearance of Wally West, and I actually found it in my collection. So I pulled it out and was looking it over, and I was struck when I went back to Rebirth, in page 10 of Rebirth, where we see Wally's origin retold. 3 of those panels are direct pulls right from this first appearance, and I loved it. And even the dialogue, the scene where Wally is introduced to Barry by Iris, that's right here in the book. The image where he gets struck by lightning through the window, there's a little Bunsen-type thing sitting on the counter. That's in this panel here. The attention to detail just struck me. And again, it's the exact same dialogue. Oh, so because I hadn't read it in years, I said, let me pull that out. So I was happy to do that. So, again, my love for this DC Rebirth knows no bounds.
Thank you for sharing that information, though, Brian, just to reinforce our feeling that history and legacy is indeed being taken seriously by DC.
Oh, when I read that, it was like, oh, it's absolutely wonderful.
There we go.
Yes.
We're harping right now. You have no idea.
Time once again for Muddle the Murd, our trivia contest here. And as we mentioned not too long ago, I think when you got muddled by Jace not too long ago, that was actually our last prize we had in the queue. And we gave away a bunch of pieces of artwork that were sent in by an anonymous listener. Well, I got a package in the studio yesterday. It says here, Comic Geek Speak, the anonymous listener strikes again. Please use the enclosed items or prizes in your various contests or for some otherwise benevolent purpose. As Mert has been mailing several of the prior items at his own expense, he is free to choose one of these items for himself if he so chooses. And he gave us a list, and actually I have almost 20 pieces of artwork here. So Mert has claimed a beautiful Wonder Woman illustration by Cassandra Polson as his selection. So awesome choice, Mert.
Oh, thank you. It is beautiful. I'm sorry. I know you had your eye on it too.
Well, that's not mine to say. And he mentioned at the very end here. He says, "By the way, while I enjoy the moniker, the anonymous listener, I did meet and introduce myself to Pants on the escalator at HeroesCon 2014 on the first day of the show. However, he failed to mention me in his con wrap-up show. Aye. So I apologize for that. Sometimes I'm not the best with writing down names. Or perhaps I wrote it down and couldn't read my own handwriting. That's a very distinct possibility. But if you see us, because Mert and I got to be at HeroesCon in just 2 weeks from now. If you see us
sure
again,
will.
Please make yourself known. That'd be wonderful. So anyway, we're going to go down the list here as he has it listed for prizes. So up first is a Superman sketch from Yale Stewart. This is the current prize up for Muddle the Murd. And our contestant in this episode is Lee Markowitz from Havertown, PA, Murd.
All right. Fellow Pennsylvanian.
Exactly.
At least the postage should be cheap.
Now, this actually came about a month ago, so it goes, Greetings, CGS crew. With baseball season just beginning, I thought it might be a good time for a Muddle the Murd segment featuring baseball-themed questions. Good luck, Murd. Question 1. EC Comics. EC Comics. That's great. Pre-1970. In The Haunts of Fear, number 19 from 1953, a crooked baseball player is torn limb from limb with his body parts used to play baseball by his killers. Oh, that's a wonderful image there. Name the baseball player that was dismembered.
Oh, come on. Oh, I think you know this is going to be a guess.
I hope
so. Slugger Carmichael.
Herbie Satan. Satten.
It's pronounced Satin.
Well, I wanted to go with the Satan wave for the whole double thing.
Yeah.
All right, question 2, Marvel Comics 1970 to 2000. In Avengers Annual number 15 from July of 1986, the East Coast and West Coast Avengers play a baseball game at a Major League Baseball stadium. What was the name of the stadium?
The stadium. All right. I'm not sure if it's even... Yeah, I want badly to ask if this was a real Major League ballpark, but that's probably out of bounds.
Well, it says in the question, at a Major League Baseball stadium. It's in the question.
Okay, so this is a real-world Major League. It might be a Marvel Universe Major League team.
No, it's a Major League Baseball stadium in the real world.
Okay. Well, Since one would hope that they'd be playing on neutral territory, I'm going to choose one that's smack dab in the middle of the country, and I'm going to go with venerable old Wrigley Field.
No! You had me with the middle of the country. Royals Stadium in Kansas City. Oh!
Does that stadium even still exist?
It does. I'm not sure what it's called right now. Probably taken over by some corporate entity. But anyway, I thought you had it there. Okay.
So close.
So close. Question 3, DC Comics, 2001 to 2000 to the present. In Green Lantern Rebirth #1 from December of 2004, the motto of Coast City's baseball team was mentioned. Well, now it's a two-part question. He goes, what was the name of the team and what was their motto? If you get either one correct, you're not muddled.
Brother. Yeah, and I'm just a little over a year away from reading that. I will be bending my leg around to kick myself in the head when I get around to reading that, I'm sure. And I see the answer that I should have given, and that is probably not the answer I'm about to give. So yeah, I'm going to try for... Oh, blimey. Coast City... Oh, brother. Coast City... I'm tempted to say Mariners, but that's the name of a real-world team, so Jeff Johns probably would not have used that. Something else having to do with the coast. He's the one who created the Keystone City Threshers franchise for Wally West's hometown. So what would fit in with his view of Coast City? The Coast City Captains.
No. Do you want to guess their motto?
No, I don't, because nothing's coming to me.
Okay, the answer is the Coast City Angels.
Oh, which is the name of a real-world ball club.
I know, and their motto was "Aim for the Stars."
Okay, yeah, I was not going to come close to that. So, well,
off to a great start.
Lee, you aimed for the stars and you hit a home run.
All right, Merge, so I've sent his email your way so you can contact Lee and work out dropping off that Superman sketch with him.
All right, which is going to be, well, I'll have to wait until I'm back in Pennsylvania. I can actually get the prize and then mail it to him, so it's going to be... Might be a little while there, Lee, but we'll get that prize to you eventually.
Good things come to those who wait.
Yep. And before we move on to whatever else awaits us, which is probably just the end credits, since we're on the subject of mailing things to people, I did want to give a quick thank you to Anthony P. up in Connecticut, who sent a package to the CGS studios recently, to my attention, containing a bunch of Christopher Priest Black Panther issues. I wanted to thank him for those. I guess he heard our spotlight, and I expressed interest in the story arc involving the Kirby Panther, popping into the present day and interacting with Priest's take on the character. And so several of the issues that Anthony sent related to that arc. And so I thanked him. I actually already have a few of them, thanks to Chris's Wild Pig sale this spring. So the ones the ones that I already have, the doubles, I sent on to Peter Rios, who was also present at that sale and was also trying to collect the Priest run. So you've helped a couple of us with your package, Anthony, and I thank you very much for it.
Excellent. Real quick, sort of a recent release, but actually a music release. Danny, have you gotten the Monkees' new album, Good Times, yet?
No, not yet. Bill's the one who buys all the music, so I just have to remind him, or just ask him to use one of his iTunes gift cards to download it.
Okay.
But I heard it's amazing.
It's a really good album. It came out last Friday, May 27th, and I just got it yesterday, Wednesday the 1st. I just listened to it today at work this morning. Mm-hmm. Wonderful. They got a lot of, well-known songwriters currently. Ben Gibbard of Death Cab for Cutie, Rivers Cuomo of Weezer, Andy Partridge of XTC. They have a Noel Gallagher and Paul Weller written song. Adam Schlesinger wrote a song, and they also have some creators from the Monkees' time. Boyce and Hart, they had an old song of theirs in here. Goffin and King, Neil Diamond, of course, Peter Tork. And the one song that I love the most out of this album, of course, is a Mike Nesmith song. It's I Know What I Know. It really, no pun intended, struck a chord with me. It's just a really, really wonderful song. So I hope you can listen to that, Dandy, sometime soon, because it's really good, because it's their 50th anniversary year, and as you know, they may be coming to your town. So,
Aren't they coming soon or did the concert already pass?
I went to see him last Friday.
Okay, I was going to say, I knew there was
yeah.
a concert that was in the area.
Yep. And, yeah.
Was it a good show?
It was a very good show. Mickey was in tremendous voice. That guy, he's like 73. He can still belt them out. Good God.
Happy to hear it.
Oh, it was wonderful. They had the backing band. They even played one of the tracks. They played "She Makes Me Laugh," which is a great song. And actually, the video for "She Makes Me Laugh," they take the old panels from the Monkees comic and have like the lyrics go across them. So it's a really really cool video and a really nice song. So, and actually, I found there's a few bonus tracks I have to track down that are on other sites. It's like, it's not on the CD. I got to get more bonus tracks. It makes me crazy. Anyway, all right. So unless there's anything else, that'll wrap it up here for this Off the Rack episode.
Gotcha.
All right. Well, this episode, once again, was brought to you by Discount Comic Book Service. Go to dcbservice.com for all your pre-ordering needs. If you want to leave us a voice, if you want to send us an email, we're at comicgeekspeak@gmail.com. If you leave us a voicemail, hold on a second while I get the phone number up here.
Shane! Where are you, Shane?
It's 267-702-6642. You can follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, we're Comic Geek Speak. You can join in the conversation at thecomicforums.vanillaforums.com. Talk back about this episode as well as many other topics. We want to thank everybody who contributed to the show. We really appreciate it. Could not do without you. And as always, we are united. Those Micest heroes, one listener at a time.
You got it on Wednesday, and it was like about it going to the volume up. These guys will talk about it, everything that geeks love. From cakes to laser beams, opinions like the seasons on everything you read. And comics, movies, games, toys, artists, comic geek speak, comic geek speak, comic geek speak, comic geek speak, comic geek. Uniting the world's mightiest heroes.